good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be hailing from. Welcome to Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents. This is episode number 32, and I am one of your hosts, Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, a technical marketing advocate person for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Today, we're going to be talking about deploying SAP. And actually, funny enough, I have a confession to make. When I announced this episode 2 weeks ago, I actually said deploying SAP ASAP, thinking that was really cute and funny. Come to find out from our engineering team that ASAP actually means something within the SAP world. So you learn something doing live streams like this. So to kind of keep me in check and make sure I don't go off the rails is my illustrious co-host, Mr. Brian Smith. How you doing, Brian?
Good. How you doing, Eric?
Oh, this time last week I was on vacation. It was 85 degrees. We had all the kids at the park. It was glorious. And today it is actually it got up to 43. So not a good example, but yesterday was like 20 and there was snow on the ground. So not that anyone really cares what the weather is in Kansas City, but going to lean on you this week to carry us through because I may end up coughing up a lung halfway through the episode. But I trust you to make sure to crack plenty of ridiculous dad jokes in the process.
Sounds good. Well, welcome back.
It was good to be back. It was a nice week off, and you know what? To be honest, we didn't do anything. I mean, we had no major events. I guess the big thing was that I wasn't on any video calls for a week straight. No calls. It was glorious.
That's nice.
But we didn't get all together today on YouTube and Twitch to talk about Eric's adventures in PTO. We're actually here to talk about SAP, and so bring in our first guest, Mr. Louis Imershein. He's back with us from a few episodes ago. He was with us for SQL, and he brought the red fedora back. So extra bonus points for the red fedora there.
Hey Eric, how's it going?
It's going great.
Hi, Brian.
Welcome back.
Hey, Louis.
But you've kind of set a precedent here because we've actually got two guests today, and he's competing with you in the Red Hat competition. I want to introduce Mr. Jim O'Donnell. Welcome to Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents, sir.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone again.
Yeah, glad to have you on the show, and you look great, you sound great, and you actually have a Red Hat hat. So I think you set a new I think you and Louis have set a new precedent for being a guest on the show.
Well, we gave away about 1,200 of these at AWS reInvent in December, and so there's a lot of people wearing this hat.
All right, so Brian, you wanna lead us off and introduce today's topic?
Yeah, should we have Louis and James introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do?
Yeah, Louis, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Reintroduce, I guess.
Sure. I'm Louis Imershein, and I guess my role's changed since the last time I was on here. So I am now responsible for business strategy for Red Hat's RHEL business unit. So SQL Server I spoke about before, and SAP, and all the other wonderful workloads that run on RHEL.
So is that a promotion, or should we be sending our condolences?
Ask me in a few weeks.
Fair enough. Jim, why don't you introduce yourself and tell folks what you do here?
Yeah, sure. Hey, gang. My name is Jim O'Donnell. I'm a solution architect at Red Hat. I come from a 16-and-a-half-year career at SAP, and then another couple of years doing implementation before joining Red Hat, where I had been working with Red Hat pretty closely on the HANA project and a few other things for years. So it was a pretty good fit. And what I do today is I help our customers understand how Red Hat solutions fit in with their SAP landscapes. So hail from Raleigh, North Carolina, where it is not 27 degrees, but it is a little damp. That's kind of it.
Gotcha. Well, welcome to RHEL Presents.
Thanks. So
for those viewers who are not familiar with what exactly SAP is, can you kind of talk about, what is SAP? What are some of the common use cases that customers would run it for, and what industries typically use SAP?
Sorry. Yeah, so I guess either of us could take that, but
Yeah.
there are very few industries that don't use SAP, and I think 90% of the Fortune 500 are SAP customers. So it's pretty prevalent. Very likely SAP. If you're working for a large company, SAP is part of your daily life. Whether it's how you do time management, how you do how you find customers, how you communicate with support. There's so many different applications for SAP and so many different pieces. Financial tracking. I mean, there's a bunch of information that can all be managed from SAP applications, and there's a really broad portfolio of applications that SAP has. It's been around for a really long time, and so and is really certainly for the last 20 years been entrenched in the corporate world, so, and government.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and as in my SAP career, I tended to focus a little bit less on sort of retail, but my industries were automotive, Fed SLED, so Department of Defense, Army, and then a lot of the related sort of commercial businesses that are aerospace and defense, things like that. But we also did a lot of really great projects with state governments, education, a lot of manufacturers, and SAP has built what they call modules that you add in to build this very, very large ERP system or enterprise resource planning system that from a CFO or from a C-suite level, they can look and see the status of the business and drill into it at a level of detail that was completely unavailable, 20 years ago, right? So that's really the main thing, is actually getting businesses into the almost into the mode of using software workloads to define and then execute virtually all business processes from HR straight through to manufacturing. It's pretty elaborate.
Yeah, if you ever hear the buzzword digital transformation, SAP
I invented that.
Yeah, SAP was definitely one of the early companies talking about digital transformation back in 2000. So, and by the way, anytime you hear one of those buzzwords, feel free to stand up in your corporate meeting. So,
yeah, that's the next question, Louis. Can you define digital transformation? No, just.
That's a signal to drink in a lot of meetings.
I think the only one worse is synergy.
Yeah.
If we can get digital transformation and synergy all going in the same direction, I think we'll really see. I was trying to throw some other buzzwords.
Yeah, I mean, bingo. That's 2 slots in the bingo card.
Yeah.
I know that we kind of poo-poo the power buzzwords, but in this case, I think the digital transformation really, anytime I hear modernization, anytime I hear digital transformation, I think exorbitant cost and change and things that scare customers. And so I think that Red Hat's actually really well positioned to help SAP and SAP's customers and partners to actually execute on that vision, because it is very much digitizing the business, but it's very, very large. A typical, was not uncommon for me to do a deal with maybe a 5-year ELA that was over 7 figures. So, or, was eight or more figures. So, so they're big, they're C-suite and board level decisions involved in deployments of SAP. And then when you get it out of the box and get, your partners and everything up and running, there's always your own business processes that you need to add, I guess, as custom code. And SAP is a development platform as well as, a shrink-wrapped application platform. And so people for 20 years have been writing their own code into the SAP platform. The challenge is that they tend to bog that platform down with custom code. And then when they go to take an upgrade, boy, just all hell breaks loose, right? They get 6 months of regression testing and all that kind of stuff. And so the things that we provide at Red Hat above and beyond RHEL, provide for automation, integration, DevOps, CI/CD, securing, managing storage, and all of the things that you really need to do out of one toolkit with one throat to choke that is a 22-year partner of SAP.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I don't know how many buzzwords I just used there, but I'm out of whiskey.
I think my card's full.
Yeah, that thought crossed my mind. So if SAP is the company and the workload we're talking about, why don't we get into what exactly is SAP HANA? And that's HANA is really where, for lack of a better expression, where the rubber meets the road when it comes to solving some of these business problems. So what is HANA exactly?
So HANA.
Okay.
You want to take it, Lou?
Lewis, you want to go first this time, Lewis?
So HANA is essentially the SAP database engine. And previously, with older versions of SAP, you could use one of several databases. But SAP is now saying that with their S4, you have to use SAP HANA. And the reason why they want you to use HANA is, well, number one, it's an in-memory, column-oriented relational database. So it's really fast. But also, it's much easier for them to develop to one database where the primary function, is to support SAP applications. And that's a really key point, because prior to this point, they were having to support and adjust to the environments of different database environments. And I don't know, Jim, if you have other things to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main benefit to SAP, is that anytime you went to a legacy sort of 70s or 80s model database, the Oracles and DB2s, you wound up with especially in a transactional system, which is the front end of SAP, a lot of little writes into tens of thousands of tables that really took a long time to execute. And so SAP was looking for a way to solve a particular bottleneck, and things just kind of came together, right? The price of memory came way down. The speed of processing went way up. So I could hold an entire warehouse or an entire ERP instance that's many terabytes wide on a single large host or a cluster of hosts. The columnar thing was brilliant, mainly for executing business questions or analytics in the exact same data space as the ERP was doing, because previously we've had to build out 3 different databases to ask a business question of an ERP system. I had to have a staging system, I had to have a data mart or a data warehouse, and I had to have that original single source of the truth, if you want. And so what HANA allows you to do, because it combines the in-memory database with the speed of columnar and a lot of development resources right on that box, is to push a ton of SAP's business logic and constructive logic down into the HANA system right at the database layer, where you can just make a call and say, what is this, protracted cost, right? And get that out of there. I can do matrix operations at lightning speed to kind of figure out what order to cash. So how do I get a quote to a customer? What's the quality of the components that I'm getting from, I don't know, some large Eastern European country that I'm not going to buy from anymore. And all of those sorts of things, I can figure out, where's my stuff coming from? Where am I using it in the business? Once it's assembled, where's it going? Who's buying it? And how do I, what are the priorities? And how do I best serve my customers?
So it sounds like we've been partnering with SAP for quite a while. Can you talk a little bit about the history of Red Hat and SAP and how we've worked together in the past?
Sure. So, we've been actually partnering with SAP for over 22 years, and they were really they were an investor in Red Hat. Even before we went public, they were investor in our second round. We together really have been leaders for all that time in the enterprise Linux and business application space. And as I mentioned before, 90% of Fortune 500 are relying on Red Hat and SAP technology. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, a lot of times if I talk about that historical roadmap and the partnership with SAP. I love the fact that we were the very first Linux distribution that was certified to run an SAP application. And then for 2 years, we didn't do really anything else with them. Then we became global technology partners with them. And we would do one transaction a year. And by that, I mean, we'll certify another product or another version of RHEL or something like that to add to our support for SAP. But over the years, over those 22 years, now we take part in SAP planning sessions with SAP and other vendors. We are a platinum partner of SAP's, and we certify probably on average 5 or 6 different products, brand new products for use with SAP, and we show them how to do things. So for instance, when SAP was called upon by the German government to help solve the sort of COVID problem, they were told, we need you to build us an app. And so SAP said, yeah, okay, we'll build you an app. And the German people said, we're not putting SAP, on every one of our phones. So SAP came to Red Hat and they said, how does it work when you do things open source? And so they built that completely out open source, which I think is a huge vindication coming from the second largest, kind of priority software developer on the planet, of our fundamental business model and delivery model. So I liked that a lot. And the other cool thing about it was, when they went to go scale it, they didn't just scale it on RHEL, they scaled it on OpenShift. Right. So they scaled it out to 30 million or 3 million people, I think. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Very cool.
So with a 22-year long partnership, I imagine that RHEL has a lot of support for SAP. So what versions is SAP currently supported on?
Well, all major versions of RHEL. So, if you're going back to RHEL 6, so all the current versions that we have are all support SAP. So not really a whole lot to talk about there. Yes.
So it sounds like if you want to deploy SAP or run SAP in your environment, you have some options for what operating system you're going to run it on. What are some of the advantages of running SAP on RHEL that are unique?
Well, I mean, first off, you have to think about just the advantages of running RHEL, right? Which is that you get a really solid foundation with open, flexible, and security-focused, operating system technologies. So you're getting all the reliability, scalability, and performance of RHEL, but you're also getting, along with that, additional content that's specific to operating in SAP landscapes. And that really comes down to things like, the libraries that SAP provides into the RHEL for SAP Solutions, as well as a lot of the automation that we do. So, we've really done a job. We're going to do a demo later on of automating a lot of the process that typically can be really time consuming in configuring an SAP system. And so, no matter where you're coming from or want to deploy, whether you're in the cloud or you're on premises, you can use those tools to automate the whole process. And then the last really key pillar is proactive monitoring. So, we have this technology called Smart Management, and we have another technology called Insights. And both of those are included with the RHEL for SAP Solutions. And this takes care of all the mission critical SAP infrastructure, and provides you with an advantage on your investment, because in the end you can use Insights to find issues rather than discover them because your end users discover them. So those can be real lifesavers. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was, of course, that high availability is integrated in with RHEL for SAP Solutions, and that's the Red Hat High Availability add-on. And that really is key to a strategy of keeping those SAP systems up and available. Anything else I left out, Jim?
No, it's pretty thorough. I think one of the things that folks are not necessarily aware of is that while RHEL comes out with a minor release for RHEL, so right now active is 7.8 and to a certain extent 9, but we come out with a minor release for RHEL about every 6 months within every major release, and we typically would automatically extend support for critical vulnerabilities, and getting that back patched into, say something's discovered in Rel 8.6, we want to get it back patched to 7.8. We would offer that kind of support typically for premium support customers for about 2 years. For SAP, because of the way the SAP software lifecycle works, we don't want to be the driver of the SAP lifecycle, and so we've extended update support to 4 years. So if you are just grabbing the latest version of RHEL to do your latest version of your SAP build, you've got the entire supported period for that minor release, plus another 4 years of extended update support where people will be backpatching critical vulnerabilities. So we're not going to be the reason a customer has to upgrade their SAP system if they're not necessarily willing to take that next SP. And SAP also releases an SP for HANA every 6 months, and for SAP S/4HANA every year. So those customers, they rely on that. When the system is down, basically the corporation is offline. And so, or I run into companies that are that seriously modeled on the SAP way of doing business, that when they have to take a window, they're offline. So we've spent 3 full years right now combining all of the things that would make it necessary to actually, even in some cases, allow a customer to take operating system patches without taking any downtime, and then or database patches, and then if they don't run into that situation, they're really, again, they're covered for 4 years, so they can really plan their releases to the needs of the business rather than the restrictions on IT, if you will.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I didn't mention, also, in addition to the online patching capabilities that are in RHEL, such as, of course, online kernel patching, which I think you guys have talked about before. There also are a tremendous amount of features that have gone into the Linux kernel and into our tuning of that kernel to deliver really high performance with SAP. And we have a dedicated performance team that lives and breathes SAP. So it's not just SAP on, one kind of hardware either. It's SAP in all the different virtual environments, and SAP in, all the different environments where it can be delivered. And so that becomes a very complex matrix. And we really have done a tremendous job in letting you tune SAP for a specific environment, and really make that optimal. So that performance really pays off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
I don't
just
want to
go ahead.
I don't want to blow right by that point, because to a systems administrator, the SAP ecosystem is incredibly complex. I mean, you've got, as you said, they're shrink wrapped applications, but you can also do a lot of custom development on the top of it. So when you're trying to deploy, if you're a Linux guy and someone comes to you and says, "Hey, we need to deploy this entire suite of tools," basically, that's a lot to kind of take in as a systems administrator. But the idea that Red Hat and SAP have worked so closely together for such a long time really speaks a lot to the stability and to the performance and the security of this platform. Is it invulnerable? No. Is it the fastest? Is it the fastest to market? No. But like you were talking about, we have an extended life cycle for SAP, which means that you're on a stable, supported platform longer than just a regular, say, Nginx package. So having all that stuff built in, having a dedicated TuneD profile for SAP means that as a systems administrator, I can go spin up a RHEL box, I can set the SAP profile, and have a sane set of defaults to work from. Yeah. And from there, it's working with your reps at SAP, it's working with your reps at Red Hat, it's working with your in-house developers to fine-tune this monster that, like you said, is the lifeblood of so many of these companies. SAP goes down, companies lose them, is hemorrhaging money. So I wanted to kind of draw some more attention to the fact that using RHEL under the covers for SAP is huge.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
was
Go
there
ahead,
was
Jim.
a study that I presented before, but it came out in 2018. It's a little bit dated, but it was over the course of 6 years, and they watched the cost of downtime of critical systems like SAP balloon. First, they watched the reasons for it, and they kind of divided it into, in my mind, sort of human malfeasance and incompetence. So human error, which we fix with policies and change control, and then there's the whole HA thing. So something external to the system brings the system down. That isn't hacking. It's a fire or a flood or something like that, and or just equipment wears out. But in any case, what we worked very hard with SAP, and SAP actually contributes to the code to give us proper fencing agents and HA agents, is to make sure that for HANA systems and for SAP application systems, which are, they're web application servers that are based on open source technology, but they're quite complex in terms of how you actually lay them out. So, instead of having one web server or one app server over a database, you've got 10 or 20 that each do slightly different jobs, balancing user workflow, and all connecting to the same database. And so it's a little bit of a complicated problem to implement HA, and we found a lot of customers were struggling with it. So a couple of things you need to know here. The new version of SAP, which is called S4 HANA, and they have a data warehouse called BW for HANA, only accepts the HANA database, which we've already kind of covered. HANA only runs on Linux. In fact, HANA only runs certified on 2 distributions of Linux, and S4, the SAP applications, are also only going to run on. They only run on Linux, right? And so they don't have to code for Big Iron AIX and Windows and all of that other kind of stuff. They have to code for one database and essentially a family of software kernels or OS kernels, and that's a huge savings for them. So they can take their developers off of testing 15 different types of environments, or really 100 different types of environments, and move them to speeding up the pace of innovation at SAP, which many customers will tell you has, sometimes it's been there, sometimes it's lagged a little bit, but that's why they get into that customization story, right? And so it's been a very cool experience to watch Red Hat just step up and help SAP make their own products better. And SAP, so those guys that you were saying live and breathe SAP, they actually live and breathe at SAP. They're in what in Waldorf is called the SAP Linux Labs. And when I first got to Red Hat about 4 years ago, there were 6 guys, and now there's 20. So so what it's about is SAP learning, okay, we got the foundation. What do we want in the foundation? So that's RHEL. And then all of the development toolkits and all the other places where we integrate, places like Solman and places like where we can pull automation in, combine it with the TuneD structure, combine it with all of that. And the great thing about what Red Hat offers in terms of automation is, everybody's written Chef and Puppet. Everybody's written a Python script or a Bash script to kind of automate some installation process. But those run on the box. Those usually take an agent. They take a lot. They're hard to delegate. They're hard to cooperate on, right? So what the automation platform does first, RHEL 8 was really designed to be automated. And so you'll find a lot of automation in there. And what we created were things that were called Ansible system roles. And from there, we built Ansible roles for SAP. So there's a collection of roles that prep your system to run Linux. And then there's another collection of roles that are SAP specific that prep your system to receive SAP packaging. And then another set of roles that prep your system to be a database workload server, because it's very different from the other one, the app server. And then there's the TuneD profiles that you've already referred to that are pulled in by those system roles. But basically, if you're familiar with basis operations and SAP install, you do work for a week or so before you actually go ahead and install the system on a multi-box, a real landscape. I mean, not a sandbox, but you're doing what's called the your in SAP parlance, you're applying notes, and there are hundreds of them. Those SAP roles that we've created they're updated daily, and they're always taking account of changes to the SAP notes, which definitely change over time. So you can have your system guaranteed to be up and running in the very best way possible with the SAP role or the Ansible roles for SAP. Then, as you run insights on top of that, it pays attention to those notes, and as they change, it delivers ways for you to identify, track, qualify, and then apply automated fixes over time. So once you get into sort of your day two operations, Insights is there to do what our developers have been doing for you prior to your installation. So it's really a remarkable change, and it's all agentless, centrally controlled and delegated. It's really a wonderful way to work, having done it the hard way for 18 years.
Yeah, I mean, only other thing I would add to that is, we talk a lot about Insights, and we've talked a lot about Insights for like monitoring
SAP.
configuration and for SAP and things like that. But Insights is also a huge advantage for RHEL for security. And I don't think that people think of all of the or understand all the capabilities that Insights brings to RHEL in terms of doing security assessments of your system. Because not only will it tell you what packages have security vulnerabilities and the severity of those vulnerabilities, so you can decide whether you want to, apply a patch or not, but also it gives you workarounds for things that haven't even been patched yet. So it's a really powerful system that just adds to that security over and above what you get in a base Linux operating system, and that's of course included in all RHEL subscriptions. So
right, and I will actually be demoing Insights for SAP here shortly. But I also wanted to point out, well, I kind of gave it away there. Insights is actually SAP aware, right? So if you're running a RHEL system for some other workload, it's got 2,000 tests it'll do against that, plus I don't know how many historical vulnerabilities. If you're running, if it knows if you've applied an SAP role to that box, then it knows, well, it's running HANA or it's running an application server, and it will do additional tests to detect for vulnerabilities in that system that may go back to an SAP KB or whatever. So if it finds something, it's going to show you the Red Hat KB. It's going to show you the related SAP note. It's going to tell you exactly what to type in on the command line to fix it. And then it's going to provide you with a playbook that you can run on the box or in Ansible centrally to fix that across your entire landscape once you've vetted that fix. And so it's a very, very flexible system, but it's also, I have a customer in Atlanta that's a major SAP customer, and they have said on SAP stages, we took the time it takes to detect, assess, repair, and restart due to an SAP vulnerability from weeks to hours.
That's amazing. But
Brian,
I don't know, man. This sounds cool. I mean, if I could run my entire business out of this one suite of applications and run it on RHEL, I mean, that sounds kind of cool. But here's what I'm hearing, Brian. I'm hearing I'm going to need tons of hardware. I'm going to need months to plan and deploy, and then I'm just a lowly sysadmin. I'm going to have to go out and install all these things and connect databases and HA and now we're talking about Insights and crap. It's going to take me months to get this thing up and running, and now you're talking about like fixing things and performance tune. I don't know, Brian.
I get it. You're the bad cop.
Today I seem to be playing that part, but Brian, it'd be great if I could just have this thing that I ran and to just do all this work for me. I mean, that's got to be crazy, right? There's nothing out there that can do that for me.
Yeah. Jim's talked about the rel system roles for SAP, which are amazing and can help get your systems all ready and apply all these notes like Jim's talking about. But yeah, we also have a bunch of other rel system roles, and we're adding more. With rel 9.0 coming out and rel 8.6, we'll be adding some additional system roles there as well. So yeah, if you want to automate, all kinds of stuff on rel, check out rel system roles for sure. So
it's part of Brian's contract for before he agreed to be my co-host. I have to allow him to talk about system roles a certain number of times an episode. That's kind of the running joke. So I had to set him up to talk about system roles for a minute.
There hasn't been one episode yet that this hasn't come up, so that's good. And then to add on to what Louis was saying about insights, if it's been a while since you looked at insights, man, there's a ton of new functionality, and it's changed significantly over the last year with new functionality, and so definitely take a look at insights if it's been a little bit since you looked at it. So one question I had, so you guys have mentioned a rel for SAP Solutions subscription a couple of times. What exactly is that subscription, and how is that different from just a regular rel subscription that we're all familiar with?
So I think we sort of covered that a bit. Like we talked about that it has the extended support, that it has the HA. It really is you can think of it as a bundle that has all the bits that you would want for an SAP environment.
Come on, get out.
Kind of lost Jim there for a second.
I think we lost Jim.
I apologize.
He'll be right back.
I apologize. My coonhound just came in here and he's making all kinds of noise, and I had to.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
Leave the office.
If there's not some kind of snafu doing a live stream, then you didn't do it right. So
we didn't get to see the dog. That's the downside.
Right. All right, Jim. You and Brian are telling me that this isn't as hard as it sounds to deploy. So why don't we queue up your demo here and prove me wrong, man?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just give you a little background about the demo. I recorded this demo. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Go for it.
You're good.
So I recorded this demo ahead of time. I do workshops, and so any SAP employees, any customers, partners that are interested in SAP and finding out more about rel for SAP and automation, we have developed a set of workshops that we offer freely. They're typically a half-day hands-on workshop or a 2-hour-long demo on different topics. And so I think, as I alluded to earlier, there's the firm foundation of rel for SAP, then there's automate, integrate, extend, and deliver. And so we've built, if you're a developer, if you're a basis admin, if you're a system admin, we've built different content for different roles. And so what I'm kind of going to be focused on right now is deployment of SAP, so some automation, but also then the sort of care and feeding and hygiene of that system, especially as it applies to running insights for SAP. And so I did that. The challenge with doing that live is that the installation of SAP is not particularly entertaining to watch, and it takes about 2.5 hours. So I just wanted to get that those things in there. So if you start to see things flying up the screen faster than I can click, that's because I'm not clicking. So I will just kind of jump right into it here. Hang on a second.
And we tried to improve our compression algorithms on this show, but I mean, we just couldn't quite get a 2.5-hour workshop compressed down to a 30-minute demo. So, I mean, we tried, but
I got you. All right, so let's see what's going on here. Am I able to share?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's gray.
Go ahead and share your demo, and I'll get that pulled up.
Okay, so I've done that, but it'll start the demo.
Oh, okay.
So it goes like that. So that's what. There we go. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the Ansible roles themselves and some other things being cut out. And what we're doing is building out an entire lab, not just one box, right? So I've got an app server, I've got a whole HA cluster for SAP Hana, I've got some other boxes in there that we would use as a jump box, and actually what we call at the time an Ansible Tower, but Ansible Automation Platform server, so that my customers can actually get in and get into this environment. And so where I built this is out on AWS. The roles are actually they don't care who your SP is; they'll work anywhere. This portion of it was actually sort of cutting out the boxes, and so you would see a fair number of servers in there. And then we get into the actual lab work where we're actually starting to apply the roles, and that's going to happen in a centralized web server. And it's happening, as you can see here, it's applying roles to 3 boxes. These are 3 SAP boxes, 2 HANA boxes, and one application server box. Very simple landscape, but it's good for demo purposes. And so it's going to go ahead and it's going to do all the roles, all the notes. It's right now about 50% of the way through getting all the notes done. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and do a full SAP installation. And what that's going to do is install HANA. And then once it gets the HANA box installed, it's going to cluster with the second HANA box and get the HA portion done, because we got a lot of tickets from customers on configuring Pacemaker. And so we just figured we'd take all of the risk out of that by putting it into an SAP system role that covers the HA part. And then we go ahead and we install the application server. The reason you have to install the database first, obviously the application dumps a lot of data. It's actually a 2 terabyte database by the time we're done. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 230 gigabytes minimum. And then to actually get it sort of operational, it blows up very quickly in terms of enabling different SAP solutions on the box. So what you see here is now we've gotten through the boxes, gotten the HANA stuff installed. And so I'm looking in Insights, and I'm going ahead and I'm seeing, oh, I've got all of these warnings on this box because I installed in an old AWS image that didn't have everything sort of backed up. It was just an older marketplace image. And so this was how I went through and actually picked all of the different CVEs that I wanted to address, downloaded the playbooks, as you can kind of see here, and then we apply them in a merged playbook that really goes through and fixes sort of all of the problems that are SAP specific. And as you look at it, it'll go through in a moment and we'll tell you, some of these are RHEL specific, some of these are definitely SAP specific, and so it's really a helpful item to be able to get in there and run it and kind of see, well, does this really make sense for my system? Is it really risky? Well, I can check the SAP notes. I can check the KB that's referred to here, but I can also download the fix and test that on my boxes. And I don't need to install anything anywhere else. This covers it, right? I've got one place where I can delegate to basis admins to get in there and do their part. I can delegate to system admins to go in and do their part. So the Linux and the SAP parts are working together, and very often those are 2 sort of fundamentally different IT capabilities and skill sets, and so those folks don't necessarily speak the same language all the time. So that's kind of my very short sort of demo of that. I'll just pop into the sort of regular mode and get out of share. But that's really how we kind of work. And as you see in that kind of demo, and if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to do that. Also, if anybody's interested in attending a workshop, you can contact your Red Hat rep or your Red Hat partner rep, and we can get that set up for you. Usually, I mean, if it's a demo, I can do it tomorrow. If it's a workshop, usually I need about a week's lead time to spin it up and to know how many folks you want to be hands-on.
Is there any kind of like trial version of this available?
Oh yeah. So I thought we had a link in the chat already, but maybe we don't. Maybe that was in another chat. But yeah, we definitely have a trial 60-day version, I believe, so that you can get in and see what all the components are. I mean, the whole idea behind SAP Solutions SKU was really to make it easy to buy, so that you didn't have to go and buy and decide about 8 different components. We built in what our customers told us they needed 90% of the time. So SAP is critical to us, so we need an HA solution that's certified by SAP. So we built that and we put it in there. We need these packages from SAP that actually enable certain GCC compiler additions and things like that. And so we package those and we include it in the SAP Solutions library. The reason we maintain a separate SKU is that SAP certification happens at a different time. It begins the day that we release the GA for RHEL, and it ends when they check all the boxes to make sure that it worked on all the systems they test. So that process can take anywhere between 3 weeks and 2 or 3 months. And so we have the separate SKU is also really kind of for your protection. So you never go in and say yum update all or update all and get into a situation where you've upgraded to 8.6 and 8.4 is the only one that's supported, and so you're unsupported by SAP. You won't see it in the RHEL for SAP Solutions. You won't see any content in RHEL for SAP Solutions distribution channels until it's been fully certified by SAP. And so that's another part of how that SKU kind of protects you. It makes sure that you have everything you need to run successfully, and then it makes sure that you never find yourself falling out of support as long as you're doing your basic blocking and tackling.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great to hear. So zooming out a little bit, we've got a few minutes left. I'm kind of thinking about this from a broader perspective. We've got RHEL, we've got our partner in SAP, we've got Ansible system roles, we've got insights, we've got all these different pieces. What does that SAP Red Hat picture look like from a broader perspective? Louis, do you want to jump in on that one?
So from a broader perspective, do you mean like with other Red Hat applications, or how are you?
Yeah, encompassing our partnership with SAP, looking at the entirety of the Red Hat portfolio. What does this mean for our end users?
I mean, really, it doesn't just begin and end with RHEL, and I think that's the key point that Jim was trying to make. You have Ansible is obviously a key part of this whole deployment and infrastructure, because it doesn't just begin and end with RHEL. It also involves all the hardware, the switching, everything else that's available, storage, and all that can be managed through Ansible, even if it's a third-party storage device that's handles its own snapshots and other things. All of those things all have to be viewed holistically. And then you can look at our middleware components, and if you look at our middleware, there's a lot of value add to using our middleware with SAP. And Jim, you might be able to talk a little more to that, but that's
sure. I mean, I love that you brought this out. I kind of meant to do it, but I mean, the value of the Red Hat partnership is, yes, of course. Of course, our flagship product is Linux, and it's RHEL, and that's the most tried, tested, trusted operating system on the planet. But the value of RHEL in an SAP scenario is not just the OS; it's the 250 other projects that we curate and that we harden and that we make, let's say, enterprise ready, and particularly along 4 dynamics that lead to that digital transformation or modernization. Because if you're an SAP customer and you have any time in and around the SAP environment, I won't say that nobody runs SAP straight out of the box, but almost everybody customizes it. At SAP we had 600 landscapes at least that I could see, and 80% of them were pure SAP. But those guys customize it too. I mean, that's how it gets to be code, right? I mean, that's how it gets into the marketplace. So as you're thinking about, how do I actually impact the bottom line for my company as an IT contributor, certainly there's value in keeping the lights on, but what Red Hat is doing is making that portion of your IT spend, is compressing it, right? Is making it cost less, because we're automating the tasks that that are repetitive and that don't don't require a whole lot of creativity on the part of my developers, to free up their hands so that they can concentrate on innovation and actually building applications and services that drive actual revenue rather than freaking out about plumbing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, also think of all of the other things that Red Hat has. Satellite, right, to manage all of those and deploy all of those systems, all the way down from Iron and bring them up. All of the capabilities that Red Hat has around OpenShift for dev and test environments, and spinning up and creating a CI/CD pipeline that you can then use to develop applications that you run in an SAP environment. There's a lot of really powerful stuff that just is part of the Red Hat portfolio, and I don't think we can probably touch on all of that today, because I think we're running out of time. But
no, that's a whole nother workshop.
Yeah,
but it does bring up a good point. I mean, the nice thing about all of that is that SAP customers have been customizing the SAP platform for years, but SAP finds that to be frustrating because it causes a lot of resistance, or technical debt gets built up. The nice thing about the way that SAP has embraced Red Hat is that they've embraced what they call side-by-side extensibility, which is to say, put up your own middleware stack, build your applications and services and microservices the way that your team likes to build them. Use our integration stack, and if you want SAP's integration platform, and combine those and just do API first programming, build it in a future-proof sort of methodology that's actually container ready. And then when you're ready to go all the way to sort of rapid deployment, rapid continuous innovation cycles and things like that, you can deploy containerized applications even without having to impact what we call the SAP digital core. And it's becoming increasingly obvious that SAP wants you to keep that digital core clean and put your custom code in its own little box, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate the two of you coming on, and I know I learned quite a bit from prepping for this episode, and even during the stream itself. SAP is just, I know it's been a core part of our business. I know that there are amazing partners, a lot of brilliant people over there working on SAP and SAP for RHEL. But it was just great to get kind of a holistic view of how does this impact RHEL, how does this impact our customers, how does this impact even the individual systems administrator, who anyone who's watched the show for more than 5 minutes knows is they're my people. That's what I'm passionate about. That's why I help bring the show to life every couple of weeks. So just being able to share that information in a condensed format with some links and a quick demo, I think it really kind of brings home just the power of Red Hat, of Linux, and of the partner ecosystem that.
I like EcoShip. That's a good sound. That sounds great. We need to add that to our bingo card.
Sweet. I'll tweet that out later, and we can get that added in. All right, Brian, you've been awfully quiet. I got your plug for system roles, and other than that, any closing thoughts as we wrap today up?
No, yeah. Thanks so much, Jim and Louis. This was a great episode. And Eric, do we want to talk about the next episode in 2 weeks? I'm really excited for this.
I do. I definitely do. So we're going to shift from huge enterprise scale ERP systems through our partners with SAP, and then in 2 weeks, Mr. Matthew Miller himself of Fedora community fame will be joining us on Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents episode 33 to talk about Fedora, about the Fedora community, open source development, what that looks like with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. I know Matt Miller was and I were talking the other day about we had Carl George on to talk about EPEL, so he wanted to dive in. Okay, that's not true. I've been meaning to talk to the Fedora team for quite some time. But Matthew Miller, if you haven't heard him speak, he's very passionate about what he does, about the open source community. And while Red Hat is a for-profit company, our hearts, I know that almost 20,000 of us, our heart is in the open source ecosystem, is part of that community. And Fedora is a huge part of that from the RHEL perspective. So join us again here, same time, same channel, in 2 weeks to meet with Matthew Miller of Fedora. Can you tell I speak for a living? All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Jim and Louis, thank you both for coming. Thank you for showing us your Red Hat hats. But until then, you can join us on Discord. You can join us on Matrix. Feel free to like, subscribe, share all the things, and more than anything, make sure you comment on this video. Let us know if there's any new content you'd like to see, or if you have any questions for Louis and Jim. Part of their agreement for coming on the show was that any questions that I don't know, I get to send to them. So we do look at your comments, and we do try and get them answered in a reasonable fashion. So thank you all very much for joining us live. If you're watching this after the fact, know that you can join us on YouTube and Twitch every 2 weeks at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central. Until then, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.